Good morning. Welcome to In a Pickle Knitting. My name is Donna. Today is Friday, August 5th, 2022. I'm coming to you from the northern part of Virginia in the U.S. This is a podcast that will have some knitting, some crafting, some sewing, and I think that's it, along with our children's literature book at the end, and also a special message at the very end. So if you don't want to stay till then, if you're done with me, fast forward to the very end. So today, my first object is a finished pair of socks, and these are them. This is a self-striping yarn that I dyed myself many years ago. And I had finished one sock, I think, the last episode. So I did finish this pair. They have a slip stitch heel flap and a short cuff, as I usually do, a regular kind of a wedge toe. And that's that. Those are going to be for me. And then I have another pair of socks, which I did post one on Instagram, so some of you may have already seen these socks. I did make a little project bag to use while I was working on the socks, and it has a gingerbread theme, which is also the theme of the socks. The pattern for the socks is called Gingerbread Dreams, and it's by Deborah Raymond from Candy Shop Yarns. She and her sister have a podcast over on YouTube, and the name's out of my head right now, but if I can, when I'm done, I can edit it in here at the bottom. I did also purchase a yarn set from her, but you could pick out your own colors. And this is her Candy Shop Yarns, and it's called Gingerbread Dreams also. So she did the yarn set and the pattern, and in the yarn set, you get the gingerbread brown. As you can see here, there's enough here to maybe make a pair of shorty socks for my grandson, and that is in fact my plan. Though I may change the other colors. I don't have enough of the pink, I think, and probably not even enough of the aqua, but I'm going to change those up a little bit and just use some scraps that I have. This pattern also, so it comes with these three colors plus the white, and I don't think I ran out of the white, but I don't see it in the back. Oh no, it is. It's way at the bottom. Okay, so I did have left over. This is the set that you get. And if you go on her Candy Shop Yarns Etsy shop or shop, you will see the actual amounts of the yarns. So that was the bag I made. And then these are the finished socks, a pair of socks. And these are also for me. As you'll see, there is a gingerbread person at the bottom down here, and this is done in duplicate stitch, so you'll stitch the entire heel, and then before you move on, you'll stop and do the duplicate stitch. I decided after doing duplicate stitch, which I've used it a lot for, weaving in ends and such, and so it's an easy concept, but I struggled a bit with it, and so I did the second one using the Intarsia method, which has its struggles too. So either way did work, and I used the chart for that. So these are Gingerbread Dreams socks, which are going to be my Christmas socks, and I'm thinking I'm going to find some pink and some aqua to maybe make a pair of pajama pants, and then get a pajama t-shirt that is one of the colors to be my Christmas jammies. So that's another finished pair of socks. I showed you this also last time. It was in progress. It is a finished cowl now. And I'm going to put the name of it up here because I think the pattern's buried deep over here. It did not turn out as long as it was supposed to. And I used all of the yarn. I mean, just little tiny bits that weren't going to do another repeat. And I did block it. I did have gauge. So I don't know what the deal was. I used every bit of the yarn, but it did make you sew it together at the end. So here are all the different parts. This is Noro yarn. Now I can't remember. Silk Garden Light. think Noro Silk Garden Light, and the colors. I think I made a project page for this on Ravelry, so you could find it there, and if I can find it, I'll put it across here too. I'm not very well planned for this today. I thought I was because I gathered everything, but this has been done for quite a while, so I actually had forgotten about it until I noticed it over on the mannequin. So that is all that's finished in the way of knitting. So I'm going to move to sewing. I just have one little thing. Got to pause here for a sec. I wanted to have the pattern to show you. This is what I made. It's called Sew Organized. Now, I had never seen this before, but last year my sister made one for me, and she made one, but she made 4 different covers for it. And I'm using it in the sewing room, but I actually feel like I could use 4 of these. So I decided, well, I'd like one down on the coffee table for when I'm not, I mean on my end table next to my chair for when I'm working, for knitting needles and the scissors and things like that. Well, right now I've been working on some felt ornaments. And so at this time I have some of my felt ornament tools in here. But this is mine. You have a set of 3 pockets up in this layer, and then a second set in this layer. And then these 2 elasticized pockets here at the bottom, and then this is a pin cushion. So I made this one. When you purchase the kit, it comes with this stand. And I don't know where she got hers. I'm pretty sure she got it from a local quilt shop, but I had not seen this in my local area quilt shop, so I did order it on Amazon because I actually think I'm going to order at least one more. They're very handy to have in different places where you're working with those tools that you may need while working. I also made another, I did make once a large one of these. Oh, both of these patterns are from the Fat Quarter Gypsy. This is a Fat Quarter pop-up, and I did make the larger one, but I decided to make a smaller one because when I'm working on the felt ornaments, I always have little scraps of embroidery floss, snipped pieces of felt, just thread ends, things like that. And so I thought if I just had this little thing right here, I could sit it right where on my lap, really, where as I'm working, and then just dump my trash in there because I'm always just making piles of cut floss on the end of the chair, and sometimes that falls on the floor and stuff. So I just thought, hey, a tiny one would be nice. These do pop up and go down, and you sew a little elastic, but I don't because I'm not taking it anywhere, so I didn't really need it to pop up and down. I wasn't happy with how you can see the lumps here of the spiral that goes around that makes it a pop-up, and I did not have that on my other one, and so I remade it actually and added, I think, 1/2 inch to each side, maybe I added a 1/4 inch to each side, a 1/2 inch total to it, so it would be a little looser, but it still was tight, so I think I need to add a little bit more. I mean, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just wanted it to look smoother, which probably I don't even need to make that over again. So those were 2 Fat Quarter Gypsy patterns, and I've made some other things from this too. I don't remember right now, but I like those little patterns that you can use a fat quarter to make something out of, or a few fat quarters. That the stand-up organizer took 2 fat quarters, but there was a bit left over. Not enough, I think, to make the trash can, but there was left over. But I even could be wrong about that. It might have been enough. So let's move on to works in progress. I am also working on 2 pairs of socks here right now. And why I have 2 at virtually the same place, I couldn't really explain. But the first pair is long ago. I had finally put it like asleep on Ravelry as a project because I just never was getting to it. But before I started something else, I said, I am going to make those things. I'm going to interrupt myself here. I have a problem, and I wonder if other people are like this too, where if I start something, unless it's the most basic of things that's totally you don't have to think about at all, when I put it down, if I don't get right back to it, it is so hard for me. It's like I have inertia. I just can't move towards it. And it's usually because I'm thinking, I don't know where I stopped. Or I stopped and had made a mistake, and I don't know if I marked off that I did that or not. And this is a patterned pair of socks, so you needed to know where you are. It's not that it can't be figured out, but I did think I had made a mistake. And I just can't make myself go back and start it. It feels like it's too much work to go back and start it. But I said, you're going to do this. So these are called Country Garden Socks. The pattern is by Ellie Jones. She is Craft House Magic. And she also sold this yarn to make these. So I had purchased the pattern and I purchased the yarn. Or it's possible the pattern was even free if you purchased the yarn. I don't recall, because it's been a really long time. Well, I have one finished. Yay, I finished one. And you'll see these little butterflies. You see this lattice at the top that is like, it's like you're in a garden. This is part of the garden. I was on the lattice. That's all I had ever finished, but I didn't know where I was there. On the heel, she has just taken a regular heel flat, but she's made it look like the lawn. This is grass here because you have different heights of the slip stitches. So I thought that was very clever. It's a wedge toe, and I'm not even sure. I didn't read the pattern for that part. I just did my toe when I knew that it was long enough. I felt like as I was working, this is way enough cuff for me. But I think I probably could have done one more repeat. The repeat is 12 rows. So it would have been fine with one more, but I'm very happy with this. Now the second sock is I am at the point of adding the heel flap. And I did stop there and put this away, but I will keep working on it because now it's very easy because the heel flap is, you know, when you've done it already once, you're okay. And I think even if I have to sit this aside for a couple weeks, it's not a problem to come back to it. It was just in that lattice stuff. I wasn't sure if I'd counted my rows, you know, punched my little clicker and it was in the right spot, or I had done something wrong. I can't recall, but I fixed it. I did rip out a few rows just so that I could be sure where I was, and then I moved forward, and they actually went pretty fast. Sometimes I feel like with pattern socks, oh, they're not going to go as fast as a pair of vanilla socks. And of course they can't possibly because you're doing different things, but for some reason I think they do move along quickly. Now my next pair of socks, I don't think I had started the last podcast. So this is a yarn from the Cozy Knitter, and it is called Cornflower. I loved these colors, and I thought I just had to have this. Cozy Knitter yarns come with 85 grams of the stripe and 30 grams of the contrast color. So you always know with 30 grams that you'd have enough for the heel, cuff, and toe. I think I decided not to do the toe, though, just because stripes going down the toe looks good to me. When I ran out and it was going to switch to another color, I did add in a little of the blue just so that it would be just, that would all be just blue at the end. So it only has 2 repeats of the colorway because this is about, I don't know, 7 or 8 colors going down. The second sock, I'm finished with the heel and I'm ready to just reduce the stitches from the gusset, and I've picked up those stitches. I just work down the rest of the sock. So this should go pretty quickly. I like to have a non-thinking kind of pair of socks always around, just for if I don't feel much like thinking. That happens a lot. Or if I know I'm going to have to go sit someplace and wait, that's what I want to have with me, something that I won't need a pattern for. I can, and especially with one done, I'll know exactly where to even start the toe. So that's another pair of socks. That's a work in progress. I have another knitting object, 2 more actually, that I'm working on. Now this first one, I hit that place where I couldn't get back to it. My yarn is trapped here. Hold on. There, the yarn was trapped under the tripod leg. It's a really easy what I'm doing right now. it's not going to be. And that's part of why it took me a while to pick it back up. This is called Ramble Shawl. And you'll notice there is some brioche knitting there. That's what's causing the ennui. Several reasons. I've only done brioche twice. Same pattern. I made 2 hats out of brioche with brioche knitting. And I did it in a class with help. And now I don't remember how to do it. So I'm going to have to go back and go through I have a brioche book, and then I'm going to have to watch some videos. So that's stopping me. And second, I'd never done any decreases or increases, and you'll see this obviously has some special stitches. So this is going to be a challenge for me. Here is where I am. I am nearly to the point where I'm going to start the brioche. I think I'm 3 rows off. But this part is totally easy, and the yarn is beautiful. I had 2 skeins of each color. It is North Light Fibers Water Street, and this color is called Riptide, which is a pretty teal, on the blue side of teal. Because sometimes you see teal and it's a green side, so they call it teal either way. And so I don't know, maybe there's a better name for that. And the other is the same, but it is called Summer Ocean. So these 2 colors, which shouldn't be catching anything because they haven't even been wound up. Hold on, there we go. So these 2 colors I need to wind, and because I'm very close to running out of yarn, and so hopefully that's enough for the brioche part, which looks smaller, but it's getting wider. So that pattern was by Andrea Mowry. That's the back side. Nobody wants to look at the back side. So here we go. I have a feeling this is going to be sitting for a long time. I will get those 2 or 3 more rows done of the garter stitch stripes, and then it's going to probably have to sit, which I'll be explaining at the end of the podcast. So let's move to some other projects that I finished. If you've watched my podcast before, you'll remember me making all those felt ornaments. I did in 2018, I believe it was. I made 1 set of the 12 Days of Christmas ornaments, and I was going to keep them, but I ended up gifting them to my parents that year. And then I laid off for several years, and again, it's that inertia. You plan to do it, but just the getting started, getting all the stuff out and trying to remember how you did things. But once I did that last year, I think I started in April, I was going to make myself a set, but I ended up making 8 sets, and I still don't have my own set. I did get them all laid out on felt. They're ready to go, but I don't think they're going to be on the tree again this year. However, there are 2 other sets. So the designer of these ornaments, the pattern creator, is MMM Crafts. And she's on Etsy, and she sells the patterns. They're made with 100% wool, felt, or a felt blend. You don't use the craft store acrylic felts. They don't work as well for what you do with this. But she has 3 sets of Christmas ornament patterns. The 12 Days of Christmas, a set called Ebenezer, I think it's called, but it's based on the Christmas Carol characters. And then the 3rd set is called 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, which is based on the ever popular poem. So she added a pattern last October to the Ebenezer set, and I downloaded the pattern, and I was so excited because I had been waiting for that pattern. I had all my materials ready, and then but before the pattern came out and I knew about it, I had started the little Advent sweaters that I knit last year as an Advent calendar. They were an Arnie and Carlos project, and that took me from October all the way until the beginning of December when it needed to be done. And so I never got this done. And again, that inertia hits me. It's like, oh, but it's all the materials and blah, blah, blah. And you kind of, I forget things. Maybe you don't. But I did finally pick that pattern up and make, this is the Ghost of Christmas Past. And there she is. He is 2022. when she makes these patterns and designs what the character is going to look like, she researches and she actually goes to the text of the original book and reads the description and then interprets that into a felt ornament pattern. So this is her interpretation. And if you go on her blog site, you can read the different parts and why they are as they are. So this is a candle snuffer, and I don't remember what she called that. You've got red beads on there, and it has some metallic felts and metallic stitching, and that is Ghost of Christmas Past. So now I have 3 because I've made Ebenezer and Mr. Marley, and she's in this blue color because that was a color that was also in both of theirs. So I'm trying to make a little color palette that I was going to go by to make all in this series. I don't know what's coming next in the series, but hopefully next year there will be another character to add to that set. Now the other set was 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, and I did make Mrs. Santa, and 2 little elves, a little boy elf and a little girl elf. And I showed them to you a long time ago, probably last March. I think that is when I started it. Last March, I had finished Mrs. Claus. And I've shown the others since then. I may pop some pictures of the whole set together. Now this one I'm going to have to be super careful because I'm not done with it. I have 2 more things to do. There are some little iridescent pipe cleaner or chenille stick Christmas trees that go, there's 4 that go on around the house. They're not Christmas trees, they're just snow-covered trees. And then I need to put the little, same as this. I have it made, it's just that's the last thing. But it is still a little wet because I've been working on it this morning. So I'm going to carefully hold it up and let's hope nothing's coming loose. This is called All Through the House, again, from the famous Night Before Christmas poem. And the little door opens and you can see a Christmas tree here and some garland hanging on the wall. There's a welcome mat, a wreath on the door, side windows. There's glitter felt alternated with not glitter felt. There's glitter around the windows and on these icicles. It's a glitter paper. So this project has more different elements. You use stiffened felt, which you do find at the craft stores, or the common craft stores. It's stiffened felt, and I could only find it in big sheets, but that's fine. It's pretty inexpensive. And that helps give this a lot of structure. Inside is some of that to help keep it in the bottom pieces. Well, I had a little recording blip there. My iPad said my storage was full and it just decided it can't record anymore. So I had to go do some things. But anyway, I'm back. I'm going to have to talk fast so that if that happens again, that I can at least get this done. I did forget to tell you about a work in progress that I was working with knitting. I had shown this to you before. It is a scarf that I wove a while back, and I used this Knitting Fever painted desert yarn in a fingering weight to make the scarf, and this was 1 skein. I wanted to make a matching hat, so I bought another skein, and I'm holding it doubled to make this hat. This is, I don't know how to say that, C-O-P-P-E, Cop? I don't know. It's by Kylie McDonald Wade, and I got this free from Ravelry, and that's a look at the hat from the top. I believe this was a worsted weight pattern, and that's why I'm doubling it. I have 96 stitches. I think I'm using a size 7 needle. I'm not very far along here, but you can see this pattern starting to develop there. And I like the way it looks, at the crown. I've made this hat before, so that is going to be a Christmas gift. So that was my only other work in progress knitting wise, so to speak. And so next, I did have another little finished object, but this was so small. It was just a leftover yarn one day, and I decided I'd knit up a little preemie hat. I didn't have anything to knit on the run, and so I just took that with me and made a little preemie hat. So I'll put that with a couple of others that I have and eventually get them to the appropriate neonatal intensive care unit where they might be able to use this. And so next, I have something maybe surprising for you and controversial. Some of you will want to cut off right here, and that's okay if that's how you feel about it. But I purchased a circular sock machine, an Erlbacher Gerhardt circular sock machine. And I bought only one cylinder, and I did a 64 stitch because I usually do 64 stitches, so I thought that's what I would do. My reason for buying it is I have so much yarn. Like, all of that is self-striping yarn, and I love knitting with self-striping yarn, but I don't know how I'll ever get through that. Plus I have a drawer down here that's full of commercial sock yarn that I want to get done, and loads of other sock yarn just to make socks. And I just feel like I have over 150 skeins for making socks. So I don't think I'll ever get through it. And I thought this was a way that I could make some gifts and use yarn that I purchased and get some enjoyment out of it, because while you can do heels, cuffs, and toes on the sock machine, I have been doing those by hand. So that's 6 hours of knitting going into a pair of socks, and you've chosen the yarn. In some cases, I've dyed the yarn myself, a few cases. So I feel like it's still a nice homemade gift, but I will be able to share more of those. So I want to show you some that I've made. It's actually 15 pairs, but I will show you kind of where I started too, because I heard it was a good idea. This isn't intended to be anything good, just to practice heels till you got good at it. So this one had about 4 heels, and I still wasn't good at it. You can tell by things like that. And I continued to make mistakes. What I was trying to do was, there is a sock pattern. I'll show you. I actually did finally succeed in making that kind of sock. I had this yarn. These are hand knit entirely. These are my socks. I love this yarn. It is this right here, in a different colorway. It's called, where is the front? Inside? That's weird because anyway, it's Universal Yarns. Universal Yarn. And this is called, see, they've covered up what it's actually called. It's called Bamboo Pop, I think. Yeah, here's one that I didn't even notice that's what it's called, Bamboo Pop Sock. And I have these 2 skeins, gray and this purple and gray. From these, I can make 2 pairs of shorty socks, this particular pattern I'll show you. And from this, I can make 2 pairs. So I had made a pair of shorty socks from this yarn, and thought, okay, I really liked those. Maybe I can make this shorty pair of socks entirely on the sock machine. And I did. Here wrong color. I think I actually gave that color pair to my daughter. Yeah, I did, I guess. Oh no, my mistake. I'm actually telling you wrong. This is the pair I made from the other half. I used a mini that I had to put in heels, cuffs, and toes. But then I thought to myself, I should try and do these shorty socks on here, and I like this yarn. This pair of socks has been run through the washer and the dryer at least 20 times. They come out perfect every time. They didn't shrink. The fiber content is 55% bamboo, 37% cotton, and 8% PBT. I don't know. That's maybe something like nylon or something to give it some strength. I don't know. But it washes in the washer and dryer. And my daughter's not really good about making sure that she doesn't put hand-knit socks through the washer and the dryer. So I thought, hey, this would be great for making shorty socks for them, which is why I have these, so that I can make my daughter and my son-in-law some, and then I will hand knit my grandson a pair out of this too, because the 64 stitch cylinder isn't going to work for him. So I made this pair out of the same yarn, and I made a second pair for my daughter. So she already has one pair of these. Then I made this pair. You see, it's called the pattern, and I would put I watched a Jamie Mayfield YouTube video on how to make this, but I got the pattern from her. There's a website she tells you where, and you download it for free. I'll write it down here, what it is. It's something about circular sock machine supplies or something like that. But it's a heel tab sock. And it's shorty. And this with a deeper heel, I don't forget what they called it, but I did a deeper heel. Fits me perfectly. So I've learned to make heels, toes, hang a hem, because you do this. This is actually like making a heel or a toe. And then you hang the hem. So on the inside, it's no finishing when you're done. All you do when you're done is you Kitchener stitch all 32 stitches around. So you're doing a long Kitchener stitch to finish the toe. And I really like these. They fit well. These are the kind of thing I throw on my feet all the time, shorty socks, because they're not as hot. So I've made a few pairs of these, but I didn't start off so well. I started off with lots of samples, and the heel it messed up there. And I made this one, and it wasn't perfect. This was just some leftover yarn. Wasn't perfect, but I actually didn't get the stitches quite right when I was Kitchenering. I hadn't had them lined up quite right, and I have a little hole there. Right there. That shouldn't be there. Of course, you could fix it, but I didn't have any more of this yarn anyway to make another one. This was, when you make that pair of socks from self-striping yarn, I always have something left over, but it's not enough to make another pair of socks. But it was enough for me to practice. This was a practice that didn't work out. Here is a practice that didn't work out, and another, and another. But it was all good practice, and I've been frustrated a lot with it because it's a steep learning curve. But I have managed to get to a place where I'm comfortable. Then my grandson came over, and he wanted to use the machine. So I thought, okay, that's fine. He can crank. And I happen to have this yarn. This is West Yorkshire Spinners yarn. I have 3 or 4 skeins of this, and I've never used any of it. So I had it ready here to just make some tubes and make a pair of socks out of it. But he wanted to make something, and so I thought he could make a scarf, just a long tube, and I would close up the ends and put some fringe. So he cranked the entire thing. And then I finished it. Now, he has it already, but I'll put a picture here of it. I was not happy with it from this standpoint. This yarn doesn't feel very good next to my neck. I found it, once it was knit up, scratchy. So I blocked it. I let it soak for I soaked it in water. Warm water, and I put some wool wash in there, and I let it sit in there for a long time, and it did soften up a bit, but I still feel like the neck for me is a very sensitive area, and I'm not the one wearing it, but I know he has sensitive skin too, so I think he's just going to play with it. But he wanted to make it, and that was great. It was fun, and he tells everybody he knit that. So then this last weekend he was over again, and he found this wool that I've had sitting up here for a very, very long time. This is Wandering Wool, and it was one of those long gradients. It was bright rainbow colors. This is the Saranac fingering weight, 100% superwash merino. Doesn't have nylon in it. You wouldn't want to make socks out of this anyway. I was going to make a shawl out of it. I had made a shawl. I knit a shawl once, and it was my first shawl I was doing with the Shawl Society from Helen Stewart. And I went to a sheep and wool festival. I don't remember which one. I think it might have been Shenandoah. And I saw it knit in this rainbow color, and I thought, oh, sorry about that. How clever that was, and it looked really, it fit just exactly the skein. So I bought it, and I never did anything with it. I actually really just liked looking at the skein, the way it was wound up into this rainbow. Well, he wanted that then to make a scarf. This will be so soft, 100% superwash merino. This is going to be so soft. So starting here at the purple end, or the violet, blue, green. That came out kind of bright there just from the reflection, I guess. And orange and the red. So what I've done is I've pulled from the purple end and the red, and I've pulled off, you know, just a little ball so that I can cut some of it and bind it off, and then I'll have the rest to make some tassels, and I did the same on the red end. So that'll be a scarf for him, and he might actually use that one. So that was a lot of fun, and he was, again, so proud. You know, he'd say, I cranked it 383 times, and that's what it was to make both scarves, so it was a lot of cranking. So now I'm just going to go through, and maybe if I remember something about the yarn, I will tell you and show you the socks that I have finished. This first pair, I know the name of the yarn. It was Scooby-Doo. That was the colorway. I don't know who made it. I lost the tag someplace. But if I can remember and find out, I'll put it up here. This pair I did use the machine to make the heel, but I did a long cuff on it, and I did a wedge toe. I'll tell you, when you crank a sock, you're cranking clockwise. And then when you take it off, it's actually going opposite of the way that we knit. So what I did was I pulled off yarn and I knit it off the back needle going around the same way that it was, because, you know, it's knit 2, purl 2. So it's the same if you're doing it backwards or forwards. So the yarn would be intended to go towards the back instead of towards the front this way. So I just knit that way, knit 2, purl 2, flipped it around, and you did this. I mean, you just kind of get used to that. So that was easy. Down here, I had to, actually, I didn't cut the yarn. I don't remember what I did. I think it's hard to explain anyway. And then I already showed you this pair, which was that bamboo pop yarn. This is one of my self-striping yarns from the Cozy Knitter. And it is colorway Be My Belle, I believe. And it came with that teal for the heels cuffs, but for the heel, I just did my normal afterthought heel and used the same yarn. So this pair I'm really pleased with. I'm happy to have knit them. This is a yarn from the main yarn. This is from Adelaide Cottage, and she doesn't sell yarn anymore, and I don't remember the color name, but I used a coral colored mini that I had left from another project. Well, actually from a Cozy Knitter project that I didn't use it for. So that pair, I like that pair a lot. I made a pair of shorty socks. I've made a pair of shorty socks out of this before for my daughter, and there wasn't enough to make another pair, so I just made as long a tube as I could, and then it made shorty socks. And this was another skein of yarn. It was actually this JoJo Land Melody, but this isn't Melody. This is, the solids are called something else, and it doesn't have any nylon in it, so I'm going to keep those for me, where I'll be careful with them. This was leftover yarn, and this was called Whoville. And I actually did buy a ribber, and I was going to do 1x1 ribbing here, but it messed up big time. I'm really having, so I thought only one was messed up, so I did a 1x1 on the other one, and then the other one messed up, and so I had to knit that myself. And I didn't have enough to even do the heels, cuffs, and toes. So I actually dyed this yarn. I didn't have a color that matched, so I dyed some yarn, a chartreuse up to match, and I think it matches pretty well enough. This was leftover yarn from Teeny Button Studios. This was part of a Harry Potter yarn club, and this is what it was called. I don't think she was repeating these colors at all. And I didn't have enough, so I dyed some purple to do the heels and the toes in. This yarn is a yarn that was gifted to me, Barocco Comfort Sock, and the fiber content is 50% superfine nylon, 50% superfine acrylic. So I'm gonna see how they wear. I hope they don't pill too much, but they knit up, they feel wonderful. And I made a really long pair of socks with those. And I did the heels, cuffs, and the toes myself, and the rest I cranked a tube. This yarn is from a sock blank by Andre Sue Knits, and it was called Dear Jane Doe. And it came with, I think it came with this mini. So I remember it came with one, and it seems like I would have used that. Now this yarn is some that I dyed myself. It was, I think, the first yarn I ever dyed. Never used it. Wasn't sure about these colors. They are bright. And they came out with these, you know, different kinds of pooling on them. And I happened to have a blue that matched perfectly for the heels and the cuffs, and the toes I just did out of the self yarn. So these are kind of a little quirky for me, but I was glad to have finally used that yarn that I dyed for something. I don't think I ever would have used it for anything else. This is yarn that I dyed, and I used it entirely. Didn't have any contrast colors in it. So it's a fall colors in a self-striping. And this is the second yarn that I ever dyed. And I really like the way this knit up in socks, and I had a purple mini that I used. So those are the socks that I have made with a sock machine, and I'm enjoying it. It's a different kind of thing to learn. I always like to learn something new, and I'm really feeling good about not having, eventually being able to use lots of the yarns that I bought because I loved, but not sure I'd ever have the time to finish them. So let's move on to our children's literature book. The very first book I ever shared with you was this book right here, Phoebe Sweater by Joanna Johnson, and the illustrations are by Eric Johnson, the husband and wife. And I made this little Phoebe and her sweater and her little dress, and the book has the patterns in it. So she has the patterns for not only to make the animal, but also the older child and toddlers sweaters. There used to be a YouTube on video that did a time lapse of that actually being knit. Well, I also did another one with you guys, or two, Henry's hat. Maybe that's the only other one I did, Henry's hat, but I don't have that book at my house right now to show you. And I did make one of those Henry's hats. It was for a gift. I quickly whipped it up, and I never took a picture of it, but it turned out really cute. So it's a hat with a little aviator kind of thing that goes up here in buttons. So it's like a flap that you knit, that you bring up in it buttons. It's fake buttons. You don't have a hole or anything. You sew the buttons through both layers. But that was a really cute book too that I've already showed you a long time ago. Well, I went to Maryland Sheep and Wool this year, and I saw Eric Johnson there, and he was selling all of their books, and I bought this one that I'd never bought before. It's Freddie's Blanket, and you'll see you've got a little platypus guy there, and this book has a pattern for the blanket as well as to make the platypus, and I have not done that, but he signed the book for me right here, and he told me that the children that you see here are their children. And so I thought, you know, that was very sweet that they put their children in their books, and that makes it a real family affair. And here you can see part of Freddie's blanket knit up with one of their children. They show it in, you can do any colors. It has that slip stitch pattern. And there is the Freddie platypus, who I think is just adorable. Now they always write their patterns to use brown sheep yarns, which is a worsted weight yarn, and I did purchase that because I wanted to be sure I had the right gauge and all, but really you can use a different worsted if that's what you have, and of course change the colors up. But this is a cute story about this this little guy who is attached to his little blanket. And, you know, anybody who has a child who has a blanket, as we do. And it's about growing up and changing. Really cute illustrations. See, they can't get the little guy to sleep. So, sweet story. And as Phoebe Sweater was my first book, Freddie's Blanket is probably going to be my last book, and most likely my last podcast. I'm having some changes go on here in life, which are probably good changes, but I'm very excited, but I'm also very, very nervous or apprehensive or anxious or something that makes your heart kind of flutter. Across the country, if you've listened to the news, you may have heard stories of how difficult it is for schools to staff themselves now with a teacher shortage. And there are many reasons for all of that, I am quite sure. But I happened to, it was just a strange way the circumstances came about, but I saw that there were 2 third-grade positions and a librarian position, along with other positions available at the school that I taught at. And I feel like I'm not purposeful right now. Not that my life doesn't have purpose, but when you are a mother and then you are a teacher and then you are a grandmother, who I was caring for my grandson for the first 5 years of his life, you have that purpose where you feel what you're doing is important. And now I'm happy in my life, but what I'm doing is more selfish. It's all what I want to do and what I want to do for myself or for gifts. And with the shortage and how I think our young children have been harmed in ways that couldn't be helped, most likely with this pandemic, that I thought if there's a shortage and I can do something to help, I want to. So I've spoken with the school. I've had an interview, and my paperwork's in. My certificate's expired because, of course, for 7 years, you know, I wasn't thinking of ever doing this again. So things will have to be done. But in these circumstances, I think they are being more lenient than perhaps in the past they may have been. But I'm waiting for an official notification from HR to know if I'm going to be doing the 3rd grade or the library job. But I'm hoping I'm going to be doing one of them. And I think at that point, I'm not going to have much time for crafting, even if I would have time for podcasting. I wouldn't have anything to show, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to clean this craft room up here, and it's going to be relatively quiet over the next year. And I'm thinking of just a year for now. If it feels good and I feel like I can still do it at my age, then I may give it 2 years. I doubt that much past that, but who can say? You never know what may happen. I never would have said I would have been doing this today. But I have so enjoyed all of the podcasting and the vlogging and all of the communications I've had with some lovely viewers who have watched from the beginning or watched from whenever and have sent me such nice messages. It really helped, because, you know, occasionally you get those that are the thumbs down or you didn't like this or that, and that can really hinder people. And I hope people stop doing that. Instead, they just move on from something they don't like and find something that they do. And when I've talked about that before, but what I'm saying is so many of you viewers have made it worth it, despite the negativity that is occasionally out there. The positive outweigh the negative so much, and I've really, really enjoyed this. But it may be time that I won't get back to it, but never say never. I didn't think I'd ever be teaching again, and that may just happen. So you never know. Maybe I'll have lots of things to share with you at another date in the future. But for now, I know for sure this is something I'm not going to have time for at all. But I hope you'll wish me well. And I have a feeling I'm just going to turn off the comments here, because I really think things are going to get moving fast, and it's hard for me to keep up with all of that. So I wish you all well. If I do manage to get something craft-wise done, I'll be sure and put it over on Instagram. I'm in a Pickle Knitting on Instagram. So if you'd like to follow there, just if you wanted to know what craziness I'm getting up to, please do. And on that note, I will say, Instagram's a funny place. I get some odd people who I'm not sure if they're real people or what, because why would they be following me? So I'm going to say this. I follow people back if I look and see they are anyway crafty, I will follow them. But if the account's private, if it looks like somebody, the stuff they have posted and they're sharing doesn't have anything to do with crafting, I block you. So that's just my thing, because I just find it weird. Somebody once, a man, or at least the picture was a man, the name was a man's name. The only pictures he liked before following me were ones where my grandson was in them. And that was an automatic for me. And I really am not posting pictures of my grandson anymore because that bothered me a great deal. So just that, if I don't follow you, either I haven't had time to even look, because I'm not on there that much. More like I'm on there when I post something, and then, you know, I may look once or twice a day for 2 minutes. I don't scroll and scroll and scroll because I don't like to spend my time, you know. I enjoy it, and that's why I like to follow knitters and crafters. I like looking at the things they do and the things you do. So for me, that's what that place is about. And so anyway, I'm going to say goodbye, farewell, and wish you all fair winds and following seas.